What's up YouTube, Dan the Fix-It Man. Got another quick video here for you. I'm going to show you how to change your front wheel bearing on a 2016 Mazda CX-9. Now we've got a little bit of noise coming from this bearing, a little bit of grinding or humming while driving. Now we're also going to put some new rotors and pads on here when we do this because we've got to take them off and the customer needs them as well. But we've already diagnosed that the fact that the bearing has gone bad and starting to make some noise. This really doesn't have a lot of play, but we've looked at everything else. We also took apart the other side and that bearing was bad. So that's also prompting us to go ahead and change this one. If you don't have a large impact, you might want to break this loose before you take off the brakes. You can either have someone step on the brakes while you try to break that loose. You can also just put a small screwdriver here in the edge of the rotor and that will catch on the caliper bracket as you turn it to loosen it. But we've got an impact, so we're not going to worry about that. The first thing we're going to do is pull the brakes off, but before I take them off, I'm going to go ahead and push the caliper piston back in by wedging a screwdriver in here through this little opening and prying that towards me, so that we will have room for the thicker, newer pads when we put them back on. All right, then we can take out these two slide pins. These are 17 millimeter. And just take note that the slide pin at the top is thicker and longer. We'll set those aside. Now we can take off the caliper, and I'm just gonna grab one of these little S hooks and hang it way up on the coil spring out of the way. Now we can just pull out the old brake pads. Now we can loosen and remove these two caliper bracket bolts. That's also a 17 millimeter. It's a good idea to have one hand on the bracket as you take these out so it doesn't drop on the ground. And sometimes these rotors will pop right off, and other times you just need to get out the rotor remover 9000. Use the Tanya Harding method and give it a little tap here on either side. I got it. Now the wheel speed sensor is going right in and it's very close to where this wheel bearing is, and so I like to take them out just so we have less chance of damaging or breaking that. It's a 10 millimeter socket. And we're just going to put that up here out of the way. All right, now I like to break loose this axle nut here so that we can push the axle in a little bit, and it'll give us a little bit more room to get on the heads of the bolts of the other side. So that's just a 32 millimeter socket. Our axle's already loose, that's great. All right, now you can see our axle pushes in a little bit, so we'll have a little bit more room to get on the head of these bolts. There's these 4 bolts that hold this hub in place, and those are all 14 millimeter. All right, got the first one. All right, got the top 2. All right, let's get the bottom ones. And the last one right here. There we go. I'm just going to use the Milwaukee and zip these out. Now I know you guys in the Rust Belt are just going to laugh at this, but watch this. Here's our bearing. Out. That's it. It literally just came right out. That's the benefit, I guess, of not living in a real rusty area. You can see we do have some rust building up here, but you know, I've seen people take 2 hours beating on these, and there's all kinds of tools and whatnot to try to break these loose, but ours just came right out, as you saw. No air hammers, no nothing. This thing just basically fell right out, and I know you guys are hating me on that, but that's just how it is here for the most part. All right, now I'm gonna just show you kind of what this sounds like. It doesn't have really much play, and if you spin it slowly, it feels okay, but watch what happens if I spin it kind of quickly. Now I'm hoping that my microphone's picking that up, but you can definitely hear some bearing noise when I spin that quickly. Definitely going bad. All right, now here's our new bearing. We had a heck of a time finding these replacement bearings. O'Reilly was the only place that even showed a listing for this bearing. This came in a Master Pro box. It says MPB 590652 was the part number, but they had to ship this over from Lubbock, Texas, and the other side I got shipped over from Springfield, Missouri. We paid for the next day shipping, but these are about 160 bucks plus about $25 in next day shipping. We did find one of these at the Mazda dealer. They wanted $429 for this hub and bearing assembly. This one's definitely a lot stiffer, but even if I spin it quickly, it's not making that same noise. Here's the old one again. Here's the new one. Can't spin it as quickly because it's stiffer, but it's definitely not making the same noise that the old one was. Now, before we put the new bearing in, I'm gonna clean this area up. We're gonna just hit that with a little wire brush on a drill. Just make sure you wear some safety glasses if you're gonna do something like this. Now before I put these bolts back in, they look like they have some sort of a remnant of some thread locker on there. I'm going to clean these up. Some of them have a little bit of corrosion. So I'm going to hit those with the wire wheel, and then I'm going to put a little bit of thread locker on them. Just using this medium strength thread locker. This is a Permatex brand. Works pretty well. And that should hold these guys in place. All right, now take note to the orientation of this dust shield. The opening just needs to match up with the two bolts here where you put your caliper. And I'm just gonna put this up here and put one of the bolts through just to kind of hold that dust shield in place. Let's go ahead and do two of them. One more thing I'm going to do is just a little bit of this anti-seize just to help with some of this corrosion that's in there. I really don't want to do much because we do have our wheel speed sensor in there. Might as well hit this shaft here too, the splines there. I'm just going to kind of spread this around inside there. Really doesn't take much, and put a little bit here on the shaft as well. Even though we didn't have a problem with that getting stuck, I just, you know, next time this needs to be done, love for it to come right off as well. Again, like it did for us. There we go. All right, now this does have a magnet on this side of the bearing, so just make sure that you don't put anything on that. Don't get that dirty. This little bit of anti-seize around the collar, I don't think it's going to hurt us at all. It's, like I said, very little. If anything, that'll just help prevent this from getting stuck. This doesn't have a top or bottom. These two holes match up with these two holes, so you can install it either way. Just get it lined up here with the splines, and then I'm just going to kind of try to get these bolts in the back started. All right, and then the bottom one here, do the same thing. And then the bottom one on the other side. All right, and then we're just gonna zip these on and make them snug first. Now the torque spec that I found online for these hub bolts say 25 foot-pounds plus 60 degrees. So what we'll do first is just torque all of these to 25, and then we're gonna turn them a 1/6 of a turn, or 60 degrees. All right, now for the 60 degrees, I don't have a degree finding torque wrench. What you can do is just take the measurement, in our case 60 degrees, and if you just look at a clock, for example, or imagine a clock, use your torque wrench, imagine that as a clock hand, you're really only going to turn it 2 hours. See, here's our torque wrench at this angle right there. That's right around just past 4 o'clock. So we're just gonna pull that up. Now we didn't quite make it because of the tie rod here. So let me just go back and pull it a little bit more. And that feels good. If you need to grab a paper plate or something and mark each one of those angles to feel more comfortable about it, that's fine too. I just kind of eyeballed it and it seemed like it worked just fine. All right, now we can grab the ABS sensor from above, and then we're just gonna feed that right back through that same hole and put in that little bolt. That's a small bolt, just don't overdo it. Nice and snug is good enough. All right, then we can put the axle nut back on. And we're gonna torque that once we get the brakes back on. Now, before I put the new rotor on, I'm gonna brush the face of this with a little bit of this anti-seize, just to make sure that that rotor doesn't get stuck here to the face of the hub. All right, now before we put this bracket on, we're gonna change the hardware here, and we're also gonna get this cleaned up. So we can just pull out all the old hardware, just these little abutment clips. They just pop right out. And we're gonna clean up this caliper bracket. A little bit of protective grease under those clips. And put these clips on. And we can put some of this thread locker on the caliper bracket bolts. And we can put our caliper bracket back on. And just get these snug with the impact. And we're going to torque these caliper bracket bolts to 80 foot-pounds. And we can put in the new brake pads. And we're going to put some of this goop on here to keep them quiet. Just on the shims. And then we can grab the caliper off of the hanger here and just put it right back over the new pads. Pull in on these little boots. Clean up our slide pins. And put some new grease on there. And pop them back in. And we're going to torque these caliper slide pins to 65 foot-pounds. Now we need to torque this axle nut to 180 foot-pounds. And you can have somebody step on the brakes to prevent this from turning, or you can just grab an old screwdriver and put it in here through the edge of the rotor. So now when it spins, this screwdriver is just going to hit the body of that caliper. Just don't use a nice screwdriver because it might bend a little bit. Right there. See how that stops it or prevents it from turning? Now we can torque this to 180 foot-pounds. And the screwdriver just comes right out. And I just got a little bit of grease on the rotor here, so I'm wiping that off. And we can put the wheel back on. And you're done. Now it's very important before you drive off, you need to step on the brake pedal several times, which will push those caliper pistons back out, pressing those pads up against the rotor where they need to be. Now when you do that, don't press the brake pedal all the way to the floor. That can damage the seals in your master cylinder. Just press it down about halfway several times until it feels firm, and just go ahead and pop the hood and double check the fluid level in your master cylinder and make sure that that's all topped off where it needs to be as well. I hope you liked the video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you don't mind. That does help me out. I'll get a link in the description where you can pick up some of these parts and tools used in the video as well. Thanks so much for watching, and good luck.